everyone, nice to see you. Hope you're not too hungry. A little I was slightly terrified when I saw my talk got classified as which I've never heard of that in any way. So if I'll just that if you're very oriented in that direction and you ask me questions, I may give you a blank stare. So you'll have to forgive me for that. What I normally work on is physics, science, and so I care about things. Moving a molecule close to a surface, the energy levels get renormal. If you shine light on a material, you can generate ripples called plasmons, and then just sort of energy levels in general. But to do that, I have to do a lot of computation, and so I will tell you about that now. So motivate why I'm calculating this quantity real quickly. So I'm mostly interested in material science for applications, photovoltaics and photocatalysts. Use the like optical to make nice phone screens, as Andre pointed out, and then also to understand your behaviors of transistors. So what I'm talking about today is dielectric response, which you may have some like vague memory in your mind from your E&M class, which hopefully was not too unpleasant. So perhaps you remember that it's the capacitor with a dielectric between it. And what you find in this problem is that between the plates, when you put a dielectric, they and the reason is that when you put some charges on this plate, say you put electrons here, the electrons right here, they hate those electrons, right? And they go to this side. And so you get an electric field going in the opposite direction. And that's what we call, okay? The expression, and I've actually suppressed these, so it's even worse. But the point is that on this side you have a matrix that's frequency dependent, matrix, right? The matrix, but it has another dimension. Okay, so really a lot, because a lot of these g vectors and a lot of these frequencies. A sum over some quantities. These are called matrix elements, which are really just integrals over your wave function. And for the purpose of this talk, you can assume we have those already. We have the sum over, these are the states that go in. And this sum here scales with the system. These variables scale with the system. And so this is actually an end of the fourth process. So it gets very expensive very fast. And then we multiply by this function, which is basically just some energy denominator. Okay, so what I wanted to note about this is that these elements here, they have the same index here. And so you can cast this as just a gigantic matrix multiplication. Okay, so that's all this is a gigantic matrix multiplication. And there is the dielectric matrix, but you get the dielectric from the polarizability this way. Completeness. So this is the expression here, but I think it's much more helpful to think about it pictorially. Okay, so this is basically, on the left-hand side you have this polarizability, and it's you can, one of its two indices are its index, which have a number of g vectors that scale as the system size. And then on that, you do m. There's actually also a complex conjugation here. And this dimension is these indices, and you multiply it by this one. And so you do this sum over all of these states, multiplication. Okay, but how do we do one big matrix multiplication? And right, because it's just enormous. And you know, the glib answer is parallelism, but the more complete answer is BLAS plus scalapack OpenMP. So I'm going to try to unpack this. It's a little bit much, but hopefully I can do a decent job. So this is, again, the matrix multiplication. And what's tricky here is that, in getting to understand this, is that both sides are distributed, but sort of differently. So on this side, which I did in red lines, very clear, these are kind of blue, the dielectric matrix is broken up into chunks like this, the blocks like this, because this is how scalapack likes things, right? But then earlier, when we calculate all these matrices to distribute actually over all of these CV pairs, we call them, and so we don't, for these, we don't break things these G vectors, because we calculate these things via FFTs, and FFTs don't scale well in parallel. They're very communication problem. But if we're parallelized over bands, over these VC, the other variable here, how do we make them meet? And this is a sort of a complicated process, but essentially we loop through this, and then we just have the processors calculate, do their calculation for the states that they have. So this is, say, processor 1. It would do for this chunk, let me go to the, oh, I'm sorry, I guess I had a whole slide there. We basically would just take the range here corresponding to this block, do the multiplication using DGEM, and then reduce everything down to this block. So there's a big communication tree there. And so, and we have to do this for every frequency, recall. So this becomes problematic because it is very large. And also to form a lot of which are because they're memory operations. And then the way it was set up before, didn't care about this frequency dependence so much, but they're starting to care about it. So your old thing where it's one frequency and then you just add a loop on the outside, right? That's sort of the most natural thing to do. It doesn't work that well because earlier in the process you're able to thousands of processors because you have many of these VC. But when you go to do the matrix inversion, I don't know if any of you are aware of this, but scalapack really doesn't scale that well. And that's problematic for us in a lot of ways. But for our problems, you can maybe only get a few hundred processors, even for big problems, not even close to that. So you're just wasting a lot of your processors, and this can become a really big bottleneck. So the solution that I came up with is to do many frequencies in parallel. And the way that you do this is that from this, what you do is you just give each processor a bigger chunk of this matrix, but you give it. So basically, a group of processors will do a smaller, and a bunch of the processors will work in parallel. And this, well, you don't have as many processors trying to do your inversion or doing your communication or anything like that, and so you, in one fell swoop, solve sort of all the on the previous slide with some the matrix elements that you have to store, but it ends up not being too big of an issue. Let's just take a quick look at the results. So that was very technical, but basically good. So I did two systems, which are the different colors here. One is bulk silicon, like the material that would go into some sort of chip, and the other one is a molecule, because molecules are also interesting, with these different numbers of processors. And for different numbers of view in parallel, and what you can see is that basically every operation by this optimization in both systems more dramatic in this. Really good, because for us it represents sort of a difficult. Okay, a molecule is small, but you can use periodic boundary conditions and eliminate a lot of the work that you have to do. So this actually represents sort of a. So this is representing sort of where we're going, and for big systems this is especially important. So basically it worked. So that's good. So conclusion. Parallelizing over frequencies reduce communication, array assignment, scale it back. It gives you a faster runtime. So I'd imagine if other people are using, they happen to have, you know, a third dimension, another index besides your matrix indices, this could be something that other people could use, because I haven't heard scale it back improving that much. And then also, I didn't really show it here, but for bigger problems, it'll allow you to go to and not have this be a limiting state. So that's also very important. Well, okay. So I'd like to thank the Blue Water Graduate Fellowship for the funding and all the help that they've given me. A couple of colleagues, Jack and a colleague at Berkeley, Felipe Enrich Dadronada, they have always been good intellectual sparring partners and helpers. Thanks.